My mission is to help 1 million people resolve their long COVID and chronic fatigue syndrome. And that was my story. And then all of a sudden, my energy started to decrease. I started having to take naps under my desk, and I was flailing. And I had to take naps, and my fatigue just kept getting worse and worse. So I realized that I had to do something about it.
Hey, it's Rob Renee with I Am Painfree podcast. Got an incredible guest with us today, Dr. Evan Hirsch, and he is walking through 5 toxic areas that can really lead to chronic health issues, but it can really hurt you even if you have one of these areas. So it's really important for you to stick around. You're going to really like this conversation. Dr. Hirsch went through his own personal issues and is an expert on long COVID. So if people who are suffering with long COVID and or just chronic fatigue, he's an expert. You're going to want to listen to this. It's awesome. Here we go. Hey, everyone. This is Rob Renee. Welcome back to the I Am Pain-Free podcast. And an awesome guest today. I have Dr. Evan Hirsch. He's got an amazing background and is really helping people in a dramatic way. So welcome to the show, Evan.
Rob, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. We've talked about so many things in our conversations up to this point that you're really going to enjoy his expertise and the things that he's doing to help people. What I love to do early on, Evan, is just to find out who you are, but then how did you get there? What brought you to the place that you are today? I know you're doing amazing things now, but how did you get to that point?
So many people, when my mission is to help 1 million people resolve their long COVID and chronic fatigue syndrome. And that was my story.
Awesome.
That I had a functional medicine practice. I had gone through conventional medical school. And then all of a sudden, my energy started to decrease. I started having to take naps under my desk. I had 10 employees, 4,000 square feet of office space, very successful practice. And I was flailing. And I had to take naps, and my fatigue just kept getting worse and worse. And finally, after napping under my desk for what felt like the 100,000th day in a row, I realized that I had to do something about it. And it wasn't just enough for me to replace the deficiencies like I was doing and helping a lot of people in my practice. I had to go on a search. And so I did, and I was able to figure out all of the causes of fatigue and figure out the most important ones, which are the toxic 5 that we're really going to focus on today. And I wrote a book about it, and I was able to resolve my fatigue and now help thousands of others. And so that became my mission.
That's amazing. I love your mission to get 1 million new people to, say it again, 1 million new people to
help 1 million people resolve their long COVID and chronic fatigue syndrome.
Nice. That's awesome. I have a similar mission is to try to get 1 million new people to read the word through their health. So I love it. That's exciting. So, man, where is your practice in the Northwest? Is that right?
I live in the Northwest, but it's 100% online. So now we have about 30% of our population is from outside of the U.S. So we've got people as far away as New Zealand and Australia, but it's mainly like U.S., Canada, and Europe.
Oh, that's really cool. I guess that is the amazing thing about the internet and the world we live in today, that not only you don't have to be physically with someone to help them along the healing journey, right? That you can help them regardless of where you live. So that's really just exciting. What made you want to get into functional medicine? Because that I'm finding a lot of doctors today, in my opinion, I just have done a lot of research on the medical industry and what happened in the early 1900s, and most doctors don't understand what happened, and they just go or are in the system. And it's fun to talk to doctors like you. Say, hey, when you are an MD, but you went and looked at it and did functional as part of your practice. So what made you do that?
So just curiosity, really. When I was doing conventional medicine, I just had a lot of questions that conventional medicine couldn't answer.
Right.
And as I started my practice and through my training, what I realized was that I wasn't okay just slapping a Band-Aid on something with a pharmaceutical. And don't get me wrong, there's definitely a place for conventional medicine. Like you break your leg, you go straight to the emergency room. You know what I mean? That's where we're really great. And surgery oftentimes can be really helpful. But for chronic disease management, it's not really the place to be. And so I started looking around. And so I went to holistic medicine. I went to integrative medicine. I went to functional medicine. I went to environmental medicine. And as I found holes in my knowledge base, and as people came to see me, and when there were people that I couldn't help, I tried to figure out why. And
Ah,
so that kind of led me down this path so that I could figure out how to help more people. And in practicing functional medicine, you generally get the sickest of the sick and people who haven't been helped by other branches of medicine. And so I just got better at hormones and vitamins and minerals and lifestyle habits. And I could help like 95% of the people who came to see me. But there was this 5% that I couldn't help. And what I
right.
learned that those are the really underlying conditions for the people that I work with. And those are the reasons why I got chronic fatigue syndrome. And so I had to go on that search. And those are the toxic five. That's a combination of heavy metals and chemicals and molds and infections and nervous system dysfunction. And so that was really why I got into it. Is it was just about being curious and following a path and realizing that I am continuing to look for answers.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that because just your innate nature was always curious. So, like you said, you had an amazing practice. 95% of the people you were helping and healing, right? So, but for you to say there's still this 5%, and for that to still motivate you to do what you did do and have done is just it's incredible. So, I just want to give you kudos for doing that. Thank you so much for being that type of person because man obviously the world needs you and so it's amazing how many people out there are really struggling and man if we can just get some information out to people and help them understand their bodies better how it works and just that's what I'm having. I'm going through some really interesting struggles with my body and I'm having an incredible time learning about it and understanding what's happening and why. And I'm working with some amazing holistic practitioners on some issues. This is really fascinating to walk through this process. And man, I'm learning so much. And I don't want to just learn it for me to know it because it's like, what good is that to? As I'm learning it, I want to share it. And I want to help other people with it. And so it's just, I love this conversation because I think just people like you, I need to amplify your voice, right? I want more people to know about Evan and your program. So the
Well,
toxic five, let's dig into the toxic five because I think those five you mentioned are, from what I'm understanding too, are obviously very critical. So let's talk about those, and then what else do you do what if it isn't one of the toxic five or something like that? Does that sound good?
yeah, absolutely. One thing I would say about like the 95% of people that I was helping and focusing now on the 5% was I could have been very happy being in that environment, helping most of the people who came in my door.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
reality is that I got chronic fatigue syndrome, and
No,
what
that's
I
a
was
good point.
practicing
That's a good
didn't
point.
help me. I went to go see other functional medicine practitioners and they couldn't help me. So
Yeah,
that's when I
yeah.
had to really go on that journey. And that became environmental medicine and the toxic five that we're going to talk about. So that combination of toxins that accumulate in your body over time
Okay.
starts off with what you get from mom through the placenta. Moms dump all their good stuff and not so good stuff into their babies. And then it's all the exposures that we had along the way. So I grew up eating a lot of wheat and dairy, and consequently, I was constipated for the majority of my life until I was into my 20s and realized it wasn't normal to have a bowel movement once a week,
Mm,
right? Consequently, I could not detoxify. And then I had mercury fillings, and we were heating things up in the microwave in plastic. And so I was getting plastic into my body. And then all the pesticides and the herbicides and the insecticides that we were getting in our non organic food in the 80s. And then there
mm.
was old places that I lived in when I was in college and when I was in medical school and residency and on. And then you kiss this person and you travel to India and you get a parasite. And I grew up in New Jersey. And so I was bitten by ticks and mosquitoes. And so I got Lyme disease. So all this stuff, I'm like, fine until I get to a breaking point where all of a sudden the body calls it quits. So it really
Okay.
was, and then I got chronic fatigue when I was in my practice. So it really is this combination of the heavy metals, the chemicals, the molds, the infections, and the nervous system dysfunction, which can be mental and emotional. Oftentimes, this can be considered trauma, but it can also be from each of these toxins. They all will cause nervous system dysfunction. And so, what I found is that we recently, just about the last 3 to 6 months or so, we've been implementing more of the nervous system retraining in our program because I'm just seeing people get so much better when we do that, because we don't know if the nervous system dysfunction is 10% of their issue or 90% of their issue. And it's always a combination of all of these that have to be addressed.
Gotcha. Yeah, it makes really good sense. You talked about like 10 different topics that I want to dig into. So it's so exciting. Let's just start with the nervous ones, the nervous system one, since that was where you ended was. So what do you do? And how do you tell when people have something wrong with their nervous system? How do you figure that out?
Great question. So here's the mic drop. Everybody has nervous system dysfunction. Okay, so
Oh,
it doesn't have to be major trauma that people experienced. It could be minor trauma, or what we consider little t trauma instead of big T trauma. So it can be what I had. I grew up in a very loving family, no divorce, parents were there for me, but parents are imperfect, right?
right.
And so there's always this needs assessment where we accommodate who we really are in order to get our needs met and stay safe in the context of our family of origin. To make sure that I had a good relationship with my parents, I had to be a certain way. And I also had two siblings. And to make sure that I was okay, I had to navigate those two siblings as well. So that's the first trauma that I had. Then there's traumas in terms of being bullied at school and being rejected by peer groups. And then there's stressors of going through intense experiences in college and medical school. There's breakups. There's this, that, and the other thing. Anything that changes your relationship to the world and makes you feel like the world is not a safe place, even for a short period of time, is going to change your nervous system. And consequently, that is just another burden that, in addition to all these other ones that we're talking about, that all of a sudden contributes to people getting chronic fatigue or people getting long COVID. Oftentimes people think, oh, it happened after this moment. I moved into a home and that home had mold, or I got COVID and then I got all these symptoms. And that's really the straw that breaks the camel's back. So it's not all of what's happening. People have to realize that they have all the toxic five when they have chronic fatigue syndrome and long COVID. Like, you can't get there just by having whatever that immediate trigger was. It's all of these other things as well.
All of them combined end up to the point where your body just says, okay, enough. And then your body shuts down, and you, in your personal situation, you'd have to take naps every day just to continue your practice. And finally, over a long period of time, you said, okay, I got to figure this out. And what a blessing that you did do that, because then look how many people you are helping through this problem. And I think the problem is going to continue to get worse and worse, just with if you look at the way that our air quality is, our food quality is, our water quality is just all declining in a pretty dramatic way. I'm super excited about the Maha movement, just not from a political perspective, but I just love the fact that there's exposure to what's happening in our health, right? And our food sources is totally corrupt, right? And our water source is messed up. It's, wow, we need to have clean water. We need to have whole foods. And I had no idea that any of this stuff was happening until my awakening experience, just going, oh my gosh, we are really in a messed up health world, and we need to let people understand that, and then we need to figure out ways to help people. So it's fun that you are talking about toxic five, because each five of those things are important, right? You could go be amazing at one, but if it's one of them, then guess what? You're still not healthy, because the other four you still need to address. So I love it. So the nervous system we talked about. Let's start with at the top. What's the first one?
So the heavy metals. Coal plants are really the biggest source of mercury exposure, where the plants will produce mercury vapor and that goes into the oceans. And so anything that you consume out of the oceans right now has mercury in it.
So how does that happen again? You just explained it, but I want to make sure people understand that. So how does that mercury get created in the water?
So a byproduct of coal plants, so the vapor that they produce into the sky
of coal plants. Okay, gotcha.
Is mercury. And so then that goes over the oceans and that settles into the oceans. And so now the testing has found that everything coming out of our oceans, unless it's really remote up until the Arctic, is going to have mercury in it. And so you are going to be safer when you're doing wild caught and whatnot, the further away that you get from land. But the reality is that the bigger fish are going to have more mercury. So tuna and halibut and swordfish, even if they're wild caught, even if it's really remote, they still, because the mercury is going to be stored in fat. Okay. And so the smaller ones, anchovies and sardines, are going to be your best option if you are in fact going to eat fish. But I really don't eat fish. The only time I eat fish is once a year on New Year's. My daughter really likes sushi. And so we get fish. and we take binders and we take chelating agents to bind up any of the mercury that we consume at that time. Yeah, I definitely don't trust this fish, but that's one of the major sources. And then the other one is the silver fillings in our mouths. So anytime we bite down, we call them silver fillings because it sounds worse to call them mercury fillings since mercury is a neurotoxin.
How they ever put those in our bodies in the first place, I'll never understand that. But
so many things, including fluoride, they're byproducts from industry, and industry is saying, how can we make money on this? Let's give it over here to this profession that can do something with it, and we can continue to make money from it. So the silver fillings are really half silver, 50% silver, 50% mercury. Every time an individual bites down that has a silver filling, it releases mercury vapor into the mouth and people swallow it. And then it gets into your system and it is a neurotoxin. So that's mercury. Cadmium comes from smoking cigarettes, whether it's mom through the placenta or your parents smoking or some secondhand smoke exposure or your firsthand smoke exposure. So that's cadmium. And then there's lead. Most of our homes have lead in them and lead dust because they've been painted over time. If your home was around before 1970, then there's going to be lead paint behind all the different layers of paint. And so you do have to, that's how we got lead exposure, and then also lead gasoline, but which we no longer have unleaded. But oftentimes lead gasoline exposure for mom, then through the placenta. So those are like the big exposures we had. There's also aluminum, which we're seeing a lot more in our daily lives. So that's mainly the heavy metals that we see.
Got it. That's interesting. I literally just 4 weeks ago got all of the mercury and metal removed from my mouth. I went to a biodentist and down in Tijuana actually, and they removed all of those as well as my root canals. I have no idea if it's a direct correlation, but it's really close in the respect that I have a condition called bradycardia. I mentioned that I've got some health issues I'm working on, and somewhat bradycardia, just for everybody's understanding, is a slow beating heart. It's called junction. It has a junctional rhythm too, so it skips over my first chamber and goes to the second chamber, fires off, and my heart beats, and that's why it's so slow. But it was in the low 30s for the last probably decade and a half or two. And then I went and did this, and the day I went there, my heart started spiking, and ever the last 5 weeks, it's now my average heart rate is raised by 13 points. So instead of 36 on the average of the last year, it's at 49 over the last 5 weeks. And this is like, what the heck? It's just so incredible that the other major change I did is I am on a really strict cancer supplement protocol. And so I did change my diet and all of my supplementation in a dramatic way at the same time. I don't know which it specifically was. Is it all the nutrients that I'm putting in my body as part of this protocol? Or is it the mercury and the root canals, the poison that was removed from my mouth? But regardless, I'm stoked because I'm like, hey, I've had this problem for a really long time, and I believe I'm getting over that hurdle. I'm totally a believer in that mercury and metals in the mouth. We need to aggressively let people understand that and how important it is. Your mouth connects to every part of your body across your entire. Your body is direct connection to the bloodstream in your mouth. Wow! So you get one little infection in a tooth, and it could affect your ankle. And I'd had no clue that was like that. Anyway, metals is interesting. I didn't know about passing it through your mom. I hadn't thought about that, but that makes sense because my parents were lifelong smokers. So I'm sure that I got some of that passed through to me when I was born. Yeah. All right. So there's the metal part. Is that one of the 5, or what are the other 4 again?
Yep. So there's heavy metals, chemicals, molds, infections, and nervous system dysfunction.
Okay, gotcha. So we hit the nervous system one right off the bat, and then we did metals. So we got 3 more. Let's do them. Let's do the chemical one.
Yeah. So with chemicals, it's like my story, like plastics. Like how many things are we drinking out of plastic or eating out of plastic, heating things up with plastic? If you remember The Graduate with Dustin Hoffman, right? The guy says to him, the future is all about plastics, right? And he was right. It became a very big field. And consequently, in the 80s, we've had a lot of exposures. Once again, mom gets exposed, it goes through the placenta. And then anything that you consume that's not organic, and now even with organic food, there's some blowover from non-organic farms, which are going to have pesticides and herbicides and insecticides and Roundup, so glyphosate. So a lot of these, they're all going to damage DNA, increase inflammation. And those are some of the chemicals. There's other exposures that we have, like in terms of face creams and products that we use to clean our homes. There's over 90,000 different chemicals that we're exposed to on a regular basis, and most of those have not been appropriately evaluated by the FDA.
Right. That's amazing. That's a lot. So your interaction, no matter you go to the grocery store, you go to a restaurant and they wipe the tables, who knows what they wipe the table with, right? You think it's healthy, and then at the same time, you're getting poison, you don't even know it.
People think bleach is great. A study just came out about Listerine being toxic. So it's like all these things that are damaging our DNA and causing inflammation.
Yeah, so I've been on a mission. My family, my wife and I have been digging into just organic products and all the cleaning materials. And even we basically don't use our microwave anymore. We bought an air fryer and try to do an air fryer without any plastics or any metals, because it's hard to heat up your food in a healthy way. And we're so used to doing it instantly with a microwave that's basically kills the nutrients in the food, as well as then, like you said, most people warm up things with plastic, and then you're getting the plastics in your body. Yeah, it's really enlightening that we need to.
And the radiation from the microwave.
Yeah, exactly. You sit there and watch it, right? And you're getting, your face is getting radiated, right? Wow, those things are amazing, how bad those are. This is fun. All right, chemicals, metals. What's the next one?
So next is mold. But before I talk about that, I think it's important for people who are listening to remember not to get overwhelmed by all this. So I'm providing you a lot of information. Just sit with it. You're going to experience some discomfort in your body because you're going to feel like you need to be doing everything that we're talking about right now. But it really is a process of, over the next year or two, make a plan for researching and removing these things from your life and from your body, and you're going to be so much better off. So just pay attention to that.
I like it. That's really smart, because your brain and being positive and your mind is super powerful and important as part of your healing journey. And if your mind is overwhelmed and you're all these things that look tragic, as oh my gosh, the world is going to fall apart tomorrow. When you have that type of mentality and attitude, then it doesn't help you. Whereas if you say, hey, I am going to get better, and this is going to be an amazing journey, and now that I'm educating myself, how do I start becoming better? Right? And how do I start doing this better? And then over time, you'll eventually get to the point where you can really make a major transformation in you and your family's health. So I love that part of that conversation. Thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah, that was really well said. We have a 4-step mindset practice in our program that helps to retrain the nervous system. But it's exactly like you said. You have to have gratitude for right now, in the moment, being grateful for this information, and then create a plan for your life and know that you're going to accomplish it. And so much of life is mindset. Anything, if you believe that you can, what's the quote? If you believe you can and you believe you can't, you're right.
You're right. That's right. Correct. That's so true. Yep.
So let's dive into mold. Yep. So half of all the buildings in the world have water damage, and most of those have mold. Wow. So water damage can be from a leaky roof. It can be from a busted pipe. It can be from a flood in the basement. And it can be from any time in the history of the home. So when you buy a home, even if the home was just built last year or the year before, you have to remember how the home was built if it's a newer home. So if I know when I'm driving around town and I see a newer home being built, it's bare bones, or it's like going up or whatever, and then it rains at some point. And then as soon as it dries out, then they're like sealing it up and all that. Has it really dried out completely? Most of the time not. So people are like, I'm in a new home. Can I still have mold? The reality is yes, unfortunately. Sometimes the pipes leak and you don't even know it. But the reality is that mold is pretty ubiquitous, and it's found in all these toxins. All the toxic 5 are found in all the people that we work with. Once again, you can't get to a place of long COVID or chronic fatigue syndrome if you don't have all of them. And we go through a process of making sure that people aren't living in a moldy environment. Even if you got your mold years ago, we still have to make sure that you're not living in it. There's really 2 reasons when we can't get people better. One is that they're living in a moldy environment and we don't know it, and they can't get out. And number two is if they have hidden infections in their mouth. And we can talk about that more when we get into the infections, but what you did with the root canals. But the mold is is a big part of this. And you don't have to see mold. If you see mold, it's really the tip of the iceberg. There's another 7/8 that's like behind the walls. But the reality is that most homes have mold in them. And it's just a question of to what degree and how much is it affecting you.
Yeah, that's really interesting. How do you typically have people check? How do they know if they're living in a mold environment?
So the best test is an EMA test that I've found. So environmental mycotoxin and moldiness assay. People can get that on our website. You can go there, click on shop and go to labs and you can order it and it comes to your house. It's a little over $300, but it's a combination of a mycotoxin test, which looks at the toxins produced by the molds, and also mold spore test. So we really need both to determine what's happening. It's not going to tell you where it's happening in the house, but you basically check the dust throughout the home, and then it tells you how healthy your home is, essentially, or how much mold potentially and mycotoxins there is in the home. And then you can determine where it is after that. But it can be a really great first test that can help try to rule that out. And it's not a perfect test. There is no such thing, but it's I think, the best test out there.
Okay, very good, very good. We'll make sure we have the links to your site in the show notes so that people can get access to that. All right, so then the next one, are we on infection? Is that the next one?
That is the next one. Yeah, we've done heavy metals, chemicals, molds, and now we're on to infection. And so this one's really interesting because a lot of people don't realize how common they are. Long COVID's the newcomer on the block. But it's very similar to Epstein-Barr virus or a flu. A lot of people will know that they had some sort of viral illness and then they got sick, or they had some sort of parasite. They traveled abroad, and then ever since then, they haven't been the same. We're also looking at bacteria and yeast. Oftentimes when people have itchy ears or itchy anus or itchy skin, it's usually because there's some sort of fungus that's present, whether it's yeast or whether it's mold. And then Lyme doesn't have to just come from a tick. It can come from anything that takes a blood meal that passes it back and forth from humans or animals. So mosquitoes or chiggers or biting flies. It can come from kissing somebody or from mom through the placenta or being sexually intimate with somebody. All those exposures that you have, you kissed the wrong person per se, and you can get some of these infections. And once again, it's not in isolation. We're 90% bug cells as this human and 10% human cells. So we have this relationship. So it really takes heavy metals, chemicals, molds, and nervous system dysfunction to happen in order to cause the immune system to become dysfunctional and allow the infections to become opportunistic. Sometimes you get some sort of like significant bolus, where I've got one client who got bit by a horsefly, and ever since then he hasn't been the same. And so the horsefly transmitted something to him, and we found a bunch of infections. But the reality is that the stage was already set. Oftentimes, if you get some of these infections, you're not going to have a problem unless you have these other causes as well.
Gotcha. So your body's already, has an issue, and it gets to here, and then you get the bug bite, and the bug bite suddenly sends you over the top. But you're like, hey, what the heck happened? It was a bug bite that caused everything. You're like, no, your body's been dealing with all these other issues, and it got finally to the breaking point. And,
Exactly.
That's really intriguing. And this is fascinating. I respect that there are so many, those are all so important, each one of them in and of themselves. And then what you mentioned is so many people are dealing with a combination of these. And if you don't have all five, you're more than likely not going to have chronic fatigue syndrome. You're not going to be taking naps in the middle of the day in your practice because you have no idea why you're exhausted and your body's just finally giving up. So let's help people who are there get rid of that. And then let's also educate people on those five so they can start making changes in their own lives in particular and say, hey, maybe it's for me, it's this. Maybe for you, it's that. And let's just all start working together to try to be more conscious about where we are and how we can be better, more healthy as we're trying to live this incredible life that God has given. He gave us an incredible body. That's what I like to tell people. It's like our bodies are made to heal themselves, right? Naturally, if we don't do all the toxic five, right? Et cetera. So if we could avoid all of those toxins and we can get our body the right nutrients and what it needs. Look at my heart, right? Who maybe it was the nutrients that I took and I'm taking who've taken my heart to the point where now it's operating more like it should be. It's just incredible. Yeah, I'm super excited to have this conversation with you. Is there anything else you'd like to share, Evan, in the time we have today?
I think that one thing is about testing. So a
Okay.
lot of people ask me, how much testing do I do? The last decade, I've done a lot of testing. And about a year ago, I really stopped doing 90% of the testing, especially on the toxic 5, because what I found was that over the course of a year, all of the toxic 5 or the toxic 4 that could come out of the body, all of them come out, but they don't come out initially. The
Okay.
testing that's generally done to look at heavy metals, chemicals, and molds and infections oftentimes is a urine test. And the urine test is going to show what you can excrete, not necessarily what your total body burden is. So when people first come to see me, they're FOS, they're full of stuff.
FOS, I love it.
and their pathways are clogged. They can't get these toxins out, and that's part of the reason why they're sick. And so when we do testing, or when I used to do testing initially, we wouldn't really show up with much. But then 3 or 6 months into the process, when we're opening up these pathways through my 4-step process, which I know we're going to talk about at some point in the future, what I found was that then all of a sudden they start to excrete and they're getting rid of all these toxins. And so the best way to really use the testing is that after we're addressing all of the toxic 5, when have we gotten rid of everything? When can we stop treatment? That's really the best way to determine that. And so that's really interesting about testing. And in terms of infections, besides urine testing, oftentimes there's serology testing, which is looking at the immune system's reaction to a particular infection. Now, if you remember what I said about the immune system getting dysfunctional based on heavy metals, chemicals, molds, and infections, et cetera, and nervous system dysfunction, we're basically then asking a dysfunctional immune system for an accurate test. And it just doesn't work right. Consequently, we're not getting really accurate reads on what the infections are. And we address all of them in our program. Doesn't cost that much more, doesn't take that much more time. And we really want to make sure that when people join our program, that it's the last program that they need, that we're addressing all of the potential causes pretty much that we know of as a medical community at this point in time. And I think testing is important. And I think that people have to have that perspective that it's not overnight. It does take at least a year for people who are going through a program. But the way that it's oftentimes nice for people to hear who've been struggling, they're like, I've been replacing the deficiencies for the last 10 years. I've been working on healing my gut. I've been taking hormones and vitamins and minerals, and all those things can be incredibly helpful in working on your lifestyle habit. But the reality is that if you're still not feeling well, it's because you're not addressing the toxic 5. Because I've never met anybody who's addressed the toxic 5 and hasn't gotten better.
Ah, there you go. That's amazing. Awesome. I would love to do just a quick intro into your method and what it is, and then let's schedule another time where we can go through your method in detail. How's that sound?
Yeah, that sounds great. So the Energy MD method is a process that I've been working on for the last decade that I found to be most helpful for helping people resolve from long COVID chronic fatigue syndrome. And the first step is to figure out the causes that people have. So in general, they're going to have the toxic 5, and they're usually going to have adrenal and mitochondrial dysfunction, because you can't really have fatigue without having those. But then the question is, what are the other ones? And so we do have to discern what those are so that we leave no stone unturned. And then the second step is to replace the deficiencies. So even though we're talking about the toxic 5, and they are the most important part of the process, we have to set the stage, and we have to, in order to be successful at removing them, in step 4, we have to make the body more resilient by replacing the deficiencies, adrenals, mitochondria, thyroid, sex hormones, vitamins, minerals, lifestyle habits, in order to make sure that people are more resilient and to decrease inflammation and give them a little bit of an uptick in energy, an early win that makes it easier to do the rest of the program. And then in step 3, we open up the detox pathways, or the exit pathways, where toxins have to go in order to get out. So this is the liver and the kidneys and the lymph, which is the garbage system in the body, and the neural lymph, which is in the brain, and the gallbladder and the intestines. All those pathways have to be open so that when we go into step 4 and we start removing the heavy metals and the chemicals, et cetera, they have a place to go. So it's like when I think about a good image for this, I think about the funnel, where we're dumping the toxins into a funnel, and the
Right.
bottom of the funnel really is the step 3, the exit pathways.
Okay.
And so if the bottom is open, then you're going to have a good flow through the funnel. And if it's closed, then basically anything you're trying to detox goes right back into the body and you feel worse. And everybody's an individual. So basically, we're trying to remove these toxins at a rate that an individual's body can tolerate, right? And so it's going to be different for everybody. And so that's another way that we personalize the program, is that we have to keep pivoting. There's always bumps along this road. But when you're going through this process and you have somebody like me in your back pocket, you just keep pivoting until you get to the finish line.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm so glad to have met you through this lovely world, connected world we're in, because I think it's a God thing that you are here right now, just because I think it's so much, people need you, and people need to know about you. And I'm just excited that you are doing what you're doing. You're obviously helping a lot of people, and I want a lot more people to know about you so that you can just continue to spread that good vibe and the good energy, and just help people get well, because we need people. There's so many people that are living life and just miserable and think that's it. There is no way to get better. And you give people hope, and hope is amazing. And I really believe that gives people stuff to live for. And who doesn't want to grow older and be able to play with their grandchildren and enjoy their life as they are living it? So let's all learn how to use Evan's 4-step method. So we'll go dig into the detail about that in our next session. So stay tuned for that. But then just learn about those toxic 5, and then just start whittling them down and figuring out ways where you can start making your house and your living area and your body a little cleaner, right? And then over time, you're going to see a major improvement. And then guess what? If you do have your lid blown and you have these chronic issues, and guess what? We've got an amazing person for you to connect with, and we'll get you in connection with Evan, and he'll be able to take you through his methodology and get you. Thank you so much, Evan. Anything else you'd like to say?
Just for people who are interested in potentially seeing if we're a good fit to work together, they can go check us out at energymdmethod.com. Awesome. I have a masterclass on there where you can learn more about my philosophy and how I do things. And if it resonates, you can get on a free call with me where we'll see if we're a good fit to work together. If we are, great. If we're not, no worries. All the best to you. So that's an option that's available if you want to see if we're a good fit.
Perfect. Again, I'll make sure that your website's linked at the bottom. People, feel free to get in connection with him. It's exciting. Thank you so much, Evan, for taking the time to do this. I know you're very busy, and I want you to go help a bunch more people. So God bless you, and we're signing off from the I Am Pain-Free podcast. As many of you know, my focus at the I Am Pain-Free podcast is help as many people get pain-free as possible. And we strive to use all natural and alternative therapies to accomplish that goal. Well, today I'm thrilled to introduce to you a revolutionary product that aligns perfectly with our mission of natural health and well-being. It's called Exodus by Exodus Strong. At Exodus Strong, their mission is to help you break free from the grip of big pharma and embrace natural solutions that promote vibrant health. With a foundation rooted in the wisdom of the Bible, the all-natural supplement harnesses the power of 7 key ingredients specifically mentioned in the scriptures. The flagship product, Exodus, is designed to be transformational, providing benefits such as energy enhancement, stress relief, blood sugar stabilization, pain relief, and anti-inflammation. So join the movement, right, to help them get 1 million new people to read the Bible every day and transform their health naturally. When you purchase Exodus, use code IAPF at checkout to receive a special free gift with your order. It's time to exit the old you and step into a new chapter of vitality and well-being. To get there, you go to exodusstrong.com. So it's Exodus, EXODUSSTRONG.com. And check out and use that IAPF for the I Am Pain-Free podcast. And then you'll experience the benefits of the Exodus mineral blend. This mineral blend is amazing. It's got the molecular hydrogen generating formula that's backed by hundreds of scientific studies. So begin your journey feeling great and looking great. Don't miss the opportunity to take control of your health with the all-natural way. So go check it out. I think you'll really enjoy it.